Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks, everybody. Welcome to our February committee meeting of Bronx Community Board 8's Aging Committee meeting. I appreciate that everyone's here. I do see that there's somebody from Councilman Dinowitz's office, and I'm sure the councilman will be joining us very soon. We do like to start off with an introduction. So Councilmember Dinowitz, there he is, wonderful. So we will start off with the just brief introduction so everyone knows who's here. And I'm Lisa Dowd, Bronx Community Board 8, chairing the Aging Committee. And Lee, you are?
I'm Lee Chong, a committee member of the Aging Committee.
Great. And Myra? Yeah.
Myra Joyce, Vice Chair of Aging.
Great. And Margaret?
Margaret Donato, committee member.
Thank you. And Rita, you're there? Rita is muted, but we have Rita Lowe with us, who's also on the board and a committee member. And Miriam?
Miriam Rabner, MJHS Hospice and Palliative Care, and a Riverdalian.
Great. And Julie?
Hi, Julie Dalton, Executive Director of RSS, Center for Ageless Living.
Great. And Andrea?
Hi, Andrea Cassidy, RSS, the Center for Ageless Living Deputy Director.
Great. And Selena? And you're on mute.
Hi, Selena Ng, RSS, social worker.
Great, thanks. Margie, whose name is RSS Center.
That's my name. That's my name.
That's in there.
This is Margie from RSS.
Thank you. And we have members from the community on the line. There's someone named Cesar. If you want to introduce yourself, you do not have to, being in the community.
Howdy, everyone. My name is Cesar. I am from the community. I also work at Kingsworth Heights Community Center.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome. Judith Green. Judith is on mute. I think Judith is might be a committee member on aging.
I'm on community board 8 on education, and I'm a member of RSS.
Right, a committee member. And Barbara.
Hi, I'm a retired associate professor of social work from Fordham University, and I have a particular interest in aging services.
Great, thank you for joining us. And now we have our special, well, we have Adam, I guess, who is working with our council member, Eric Dinowitz, and former chair of this committee.
That's me, yeah. That's what do we say? I'm not only the councilman, I'm also a member of the committee, right? Is that the old old commercials? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a customer.
I'm also a customer. I'm also a customer. Yeah.
Well,
not just
welcome.
friends, I'm also a customer.
Thank you for joining us. And this is a big month because, I'm so happy that, Councilmember Dinowitz is joining us because it's a big month for the legislative package put together. It's actually, I think, 10 different pieces of proposed legislature, and a few were approved recently. So I guess Councilmember Dinowitz is also on the Aging Committee of City Council. So I thought maybe you can walk us through some of the new laws that we have.
Sure. And as I go through, of course, if there are questions, just, feel free to interrupt, or maybe, I mean, you're the chair, so I don't know if you have a process of like hand raising.
No, go for it.
So you're the boss, Lisa. Lisa the boss.
Sure.
So yeah,
I have one more introduction, and now I see two more. Herb Barrett. Herb, thank you for joining us. So Herb is there in front of Memorial Grove. And we're having somebody sign in named Joseph Hickman, who I do not know, but welcome, Joseph Hickman. And Eric, back to you. So sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no, not at all. So, as Lisa mentioned, I used to chair this committee. That was very fun. And I personally, had grown up knowing our senior centers, spending a lot of time with older adults, including like my grandma, right, who lived in the Amalgamated. Like so many people my age, we were lucky enough to grow up with at least one grandparent. And so, I went to the council and I asked to join the Committee on the Aging. And we're dealing with, and in this bill package, there's a couple of different issues that we're dealing with. Some will seem familiar from your work that you did so intently during the height of the pandemic. And others are issues that have been, bubbling up for years. But until this council, we're really trying to address. So two things, I guess, two main categories. And I'm going to be looking to the side because I do need to read the legislation. I don't remember the introduction numbers for each piece of legislation, so forgive my head movement. But there's, I think, two main categories. One is housing, and the other is, a recognition that there's diversity within the senior, the older adult community. So I'll start with that, and the biggest one I think that would impact the older adult clubs is Introduction 672. It's culturally relevant programming for older adults. And what it's going to do, I think there's going to be a survey. DFTA, the Department for the Aging, has to conduct a survey to identify the communities served by each older adult center and the prevalent spoken languages of each community. And then each older adult center will be notified of the spoken languages at least once annually. And so what that will allow the older adult centers to do is to create culturally relevant programming. And I think the easy example is if DFTA tells Riverdale Senior Services or tells, Riverdale Y, for example, that, actually 25% of the population you serve are Spanish speakers, or subscribe to a particular culture or belief, it will allow the older adult center to address those needs. So the only requirement, though, the only thing that may be incumbent upon the center is this line here. It says the department shall require each older adult center to develop and conduct programming in each prevalent spoken language of such center as identified pursuant to subdivision B of this section, which is 20% or more of older adults. Such programming shall consider the cultural and ethnic background that relates to each prevalent spoken language. So that is really, and it's something that I personally, I think I'm talking to a crowd of people who know me, but for those who may not, this is something that I think is important to us as a city. It's important to me personally. Those of you who know me know that a few years into teaching, I took it upon myself to learn enough Spanish to communicate with the families of my students, because a lot of my students' families were only Spanish speakers. And although we had some translators and stuff at the school, I felt it important for me to directly have those conversations with the families. So this is something that's, this is a value that I've held for many years, something I've acted on. It's now something we can do in the city to make sure that we are inclusive of everyone. And I, especially those of you who are very involved in food delivery services when we were in lockdown and programming during lockdown, I think everyone here knows the critical importance of engaging communities that aren't always engaged with the older adult clubs. I mean, that's something that, you know, we speak about a lot, which is, you know, the people that were, I guess, registered with the older adult clubs and had relationships with them fared better. They got the meal delivery, they had the programming. And what this allows is to, you know, hopefully attract more people, a broader variety of people, not with the purpose of, but the result being that, God forbid, there's something else happens, we're able to have a relationship with the people who didn't have that relationship with the older adult center. That's, you know, typically people who aren't speaking English, for example. So that's the one that I wanted to focus on, but there's a few others. Introduction 654. I want to make sure 564, introduction 564 requires DFTA to create a commission for the LGBTQIA plus older adults and aging within the department. So their goal is to identify the challenges, share best practices, and develop expert recommendations on ways to improve the quality of life of LGBTQIA older adults. They're required to submit 2 reports. The first report no later than 1 year after enactment, and the second report no later than 2 years after submission of the report. And I think, you know, one of the things that we talk a lot about in politics is differences of like political views. It's not spoken as much about, you know, generational differences. And I think one of the things that maybe some of the younger folks, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, forget is, because they weren't alive, you know, 20, 30 years ago when I was in high school, and, you know, my friends who are in the LGBTQ community, we were in high school, the conversation was about, you know, in this country was very much centered on civil unions. You know, it wasn't even talking about marriage equality. And then when marriage equality started becoming legal, a majority of people in the United States did not agree that it should be legal. And so just think about even before the 90s, the 80s. So we have a, you know, there's a generational shift that's going on. And so when we look around at the general population nowadays, it is, I think in general, very inclusive, as a matter of course for LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers. But there is that generational difference. And I think this bill is going to help, you know, target, you know, what are the needs of the older community, especially the ones who were hit by the, you know, the HIV epidemic in the 80s, which is, you know, again, you know, today's LGBTQ plus community, they weren't alive for it. So so this is an important bill to be inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community. And the other in this sort of package in that category is 623, and that's about anti-discrimination. So the legislation would require senior service providers to attend a training to prevent and eliminate discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and to take a refresher training at least once every 3 years. The department would also be required to hold at least 2 educational sessions each year to provide counseling and training to guests and senior center members on such discrimination. Senior centers or older adult clubs would also be required to post signs in common areas with information about discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, including how to report such instances and available avenues of relief and action. Similar to, you know, in line with, you know, the previous bill I mentioned. So with, I don't know if anyone has any comments or concerns about those first few bills I mentioned, because the next set is more to deal with housing. But does anyone have questions or like things they want to share about the first few bills that I mentioned?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Me, Lisa.
Madam Chair.
Who is going to conduct the survey in terms of language and cultural background? Is it New York City Aging that conducts the survey using whatever data is in the new PRISM system, perhaps, or are the centers? I think the centers pretty much knows who comes to the center. I don't know how do you know that, or maybe the logistics haven't worked out yet?
So the language in the bill is the department. So that's DIFTA.
Yeah.
It doesn't identify in the bill how they identify the languages. Just the mandate is only to identify the communities served by each older adult center. And says the prevalent spoken language spoken by 20% of more of older adults. And it says they shall identify the communities. It does not give the methods how. So that would be, it appears that DIFTA would determine their own methodology.
And okay, well, just a comment from Lisa from just my own personal observations.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are bilingual, and do we have, I don't know, I just hope that's considered in terms of the number of programs that are, need to be whether bilingual and of course, cultural sensitivity. But anyway, hopefully there'll be feedback. The centers will be given the opportunity to help tweak the program so that it actually works. Anyway, that's
Right.
just a comment.
Well, so my assumption is that it's not requiring. So at max, it would be 5 languages. I mean, that's the math. It's 20%. It says languages other than English spoken by 20% or more of older adults. So the likelihood that there's going to be 5 different languages is slim. So that deals with that. But I think that number is inclusive of saying, hey, if you have a prevalent enough amount of people who are, speaking, perhaps for MMCC, maybe it's Bangladeshi or Arabic or, large populations there, Urdu. But it also doesn't seem to be requiring like every single program to be simulcast or shared in multiple languages. I think it's just saying, hey, there are more people than just English people who exclusively speak English, and we want to be inclusive of everyone and make sure that there's something at our centers and that we're capturing as many people as possible.
Great. All right. Any other questions regarding, Herb has, Barbara.
A very quick question. When we talk about the community, are we talking about those that the center serves, or the catchment area that the center is supposed to serve? Am I making sense there?
Yes. So you're talking about, is it, the people you have on the list of your senior center or their geographic area? What we're going to do is some of these questions I right now don't have the answer for. And as Lisa mentioned, Adam Staropoli, my budget and legislative director, is on the line. He's waving. He's taking some notes, and we can get back with the answer to these questions because I don't want to give a made up answer.
Great.
Who does that? Okay. So the other package, the other bills in the package deal, for the most part with housing. So I'm going to go through those and forgive my, again, looking to the side. So the first one is the right to representation in eviction proceedings. You may remember, I think this is in line with the right to counsel law. And the right to counsel law was pretty much as if you make under a certain amount of money, you are entitled to free legal services if you are facing eviction. This bill does 2 things. It expands those to anyone age 60 and over. So if any of your members are facing eviction, age 60 and over, regardless of income, they're entitled to free representation in housing court. The second thing it does, it sort of adds a provision for for housing support. So I'll just go through it. It'll establish housing support program for helping people 60 years or older. They have to provide case management, like an intake session, referrals for assistance completing applications, ongoing support. And with that, they have to maintain an online portal, maintain a phone number, and are going to conduct ongoing outreach for this program. So that's an effort. That's the Office of Civil Justice. That's the Office of Civil Justice will be doing that work. And again, that's, something that I think a lot of us who deal with, people facing homelessness is recognizing homelessness isn't just the people we see sleeping on the bench outside. It's most of it comes from people who are kicked out of their own apartments because they can't afford rent. And this, helps seek to alleviate that, especially within the older adult population. The second part of that is a Know Your Rights pamphlet. So it's information. So it isn't just about housing, but it's going to be in multiple languages. Let me scroll down to the part. Sorry. So it's educating older adults about rights, access to information about age discrimination, deed theft, elder abuse, emergency preparedness, food security, healthcare insurance, home care, housing accommodations, living wills, and transportation. In fact, some of the things that I know in the past few years have been topics of conversation on this committee. Because I know Lisa has discussed some of these, and I know when I was chair, we touched on one or two of these. So now it's an informational pamphlet for all this information. So they will post an update on their website and will be posted on the 301 Citizen Center website. That's the gist of it. I won't read the whole bill, but that's the gist of it. But these are common issues that face older adults. More information for them. The goal is to be helpful with that. Telemedicine. So this one's a little complicated,
Eric?
but the bill requires the Department of Health and Mental
There's a
Hygiene
question
to
from
create
Lee.
a medic.
We
Yeah,
have a-
Lee, hi.
Hi, I just have a question regarding housing. Is there anything in this package about creating more NORCs?
No,
No, why not?
it's not in the pack. Not in the pack.
Yeah.
It's not in the pack. But there is something. NORCs are mentioned in here.
Oh, all right.
So,
Because I think we only have one NORC in our district, which is amalgamated.
we have more than one NORC, and if you want more information on NORCs, again, we can certainly have it's kind of a separate conversation about that. But I don't think any of these bills specifically
Deal with that?
reference NORCs. No.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So this bill, the telemedicine bill, requires the DOHMH, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, to create a telemedicine accessibility plan to improve availability and accessibility of portable monitoring devices and telehealth devices for populations that can be better served by telehealth. And I'm going to skip around, but there's also a digital literacy bill. I know it's not the same as health, but I know digital literacy was March of 2020. All of our older adults clubs were switching over to digital programming. Many of you, you're still doing hybrid programming, but the hardware piece is not mentioned in here. I know a lot of you spent money on the hardware, but this bill requires do it. I never know how to pronounce it. DOITT, Department of Information Technology and Telecommunication, with DIFTA to establish and implement an online digital literacy program to serve older adults. And again, a lot of that work you're doing, I think the city, we're saying, the city should be taking on some of that work. So going back to telehealth, educational information about accessing telehealth services accessing online platforms which offer lectures, workshops, using social media, using online or web-based calendar apps, accessing websites and mobile apps, identifying and avoiding online fraud or scams. Again, that was a hearing topic of ours. Accessing other programs and applications. And this is tied in, by the way, I'll digress a little bit. This is tied into some of the other work that I'm doing in the council. So for example, improving our 311 systems. And the importance of 311 isn't just telling the city that there's a problem. The importance of 311 is when a city agency looks at where the problems are and where they need to make improvements, they look for which communities or which buildings or which square blocks are calling in 311 complaints. So that's certainly something, as we know, scams target older adults. And, you know, a few years ago, it was a lot of phone scams, and now it's more and more, it's online scams. But, you know, technology 15 years ago didn't include social media. Social media didn't exist in the way it does now 15, 20 years ago. And so, you know, Zoom didn't exist. So we're really making a law that's going to provide information, but also help people, again, avoid those scams, report to 311, and access the skills they need to engage in the programming that you are providing. And, okay, digital literacy. Okay, so I'm going back and forth between housing and the technology. Universal accessibility. So this is kind of a really cool one, really big one. It's 676. So this is requiring, if a building is getting subsidies from New York City, they're building with city subsidies, they have to incorporate elements of universal design. And universal design, in short, is just design that's universal. It's for everyone. And the example that's always given, or I always give, or I learned when I was a special education teacher is, you know, if you have a staircase and a ramp, everyone can use the ramp and not everyone can use the staircase. So they give some examples in here in the bill, but what it does is it requires the HPD, Department of Housing Preservation and Development, to develop a list of universal design features and require that a developer who receives city financial assistance incorporate universal design in all dwelling units in new housing developments. And of course, there's a reporting component. It doesn't require every single unit that is currently in the market to be retrofitted or anything. But the legislation gives some examples, and I just want to read them if I could find them. Okay, so the list includes, but not limited to, an accessible route through the dwelling unit, usable doors with accessible door hardware, and maneuvering clearances to accommodate wheelchair movement, usable bathrooms with removable base cabinets for knee space and grab bars, or wall reinforcement for future installation of grab bars, usable kitchens with removable base cabinets under the sink and work surface, and low or adjustable countertops, and light switches, outlets, and controls in accessible locations. And I will just add, you know, my experience with universal design is for people with disabilities. In the context of this bill, it was with the lens of older adults. But the point of universal design is that it doesn't matter. You know, the point of universal design is that it's universal. It's for everyone. So if you are, let's say the grab bars, for example, let's say, or wheelchair, right? Wheelchair. It can be for an older adult. It can be for someone with a disability. It could be for someone who broke their leg. It could be for a person, in their 30s, let's say they're 37 years old and didn't previously have a disability and is not yet an older adult. Legislation like this really is for everyone, such as all things are for that involve universal design.
Councilmember Denoise, do we have questions?
Yes, yes, Chair.
I just want to mention, like, the 4 different housing pieces of legislation, laws. I think they were
Yeah.
all recently passed by city council, right?
Yeah, yes. So the process now is, I'll tell you which ones passed. The spoken language ones at older adult centers,
Mhm.
the eviction help for legal services for people, older adults facing eviction, the Know Your Rights pamphlet, and the universal design. Those have been enacted, and I think I was a sponsor on all of those bills. Those have been voted on. The rest are in the committee phase, or if actually those four have passed. I'm not sure if the rest of them have had a hearing yet, and I think I don't know if they've had a hearing yet. But those four have been enacted. They are waiting for the mayor to sign. So
Okay, and-
we're going to see those. Hopefully, the mayor signs it and he doesn't veto it and send it back to us.
Would there be a budget proposal that goes with it? I don't know. I'm sure there's cost to this.
Yeah, so most of so it's a little weird, right? Like when we think of Congress, they pass a bill and there's a budget component. When the council passes legislation, we pass the bill, and then the mayor, the agency just sort of kind of like has to pay for it. And there's not always I don't remember what the we get a fiscal impact statement. I'm not sure what the fiscal impact statement said, but it's usually $0, with the assumption that these initiatives will just be included in the work the agency does. Now, the mayor may say, you know, this is going to cost money. They'll include, in his budget will include money for it, or the council in our budgetary response. So we're in the response phase of the budget season. We may, in our response, say, you know, we have this law. The mayor proposed to cut DFTA, but we know DFTA needs more money to do, you know, to create to do the survey for the culturally relevant programming for older adults, and to do the online digital literacy. So that's that's where we are now. But the bills themselves aren't going to include a budget component.
Okay, great. I see Margie has a question.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Eric. What can we do to help support passing the other legislation? Is it letters writing? Is it speaking at committee hearings? Like, what do you think would be helpful to pass the other parts? Because all the legislation on that seems pretty important.
I always like, you know, the testifying at hearings. I know it's hard, although I think I did see Riverdale Senior Services bus come by once last year or 2 years ago. But I always found that testifying at the hearings is good. You can also submit testimony. You can testify online. Those are all things that you can do. I found that to be helpful. And of course, writing the mayor, you know, at some point, these four bills, the way the legislation works is we'll do a bill. Like I just passed a bill the mayor just signed, but before that I introduced it. And, you know, typically we work with the administration to work on the language. You know, we want to do something, we in the council want to get something done. Typically the mayor wants to help too, and wants to do it in a way that's feasible. So we in the council are, you know, negotiating with the mayor back and forth. You know, if their administration doesn't know this is of importance, they may push back. They may even threaten to veto it. So I would say the two things is yes, at the committee hearings. And then I would say also like writing to the mayor's office if there's particular legislation that is of great import to the older adult community.
Thank you.
There was one more, and it was Introduction 255 about SCREE and DREE online. So this one's in committee, and we would require, so SCREE and DREE, those are rent freeze programs if you have a disability or you're an older adult. So it would require the Department of Finance to establish an online system for tenants to apply and to renew their benefits. And it would require DOF conduct outreach efforts via telephone or electronic mail for any notice issued to tenants related to these programs. And it would specify events that would constitute as a permanent decrease of income, triggering a rent redetermination for screen injury. And, just for example, like we get a list of the tenants who are in the SCREE program. And what my office did last year was we sent them mail. We sent them like a letter with a stamp on it in their mailbox, reminding them to re-enroll. So they have to re-enroll every year, and like we were helping remind them. But the truth is, it should be more systemic than that. In addition, the website allows people to check on the status of their SCREE and DREE application. I'm just looking for where it says, but it gives like a whole list of the system shall indicate for each individual whether the department or city agency has received it, approved or rejected the application, mailed or delivered the letter, and they can view, and a tenant can view their status for each exemption, active status, inactive status, and allow a tenant to view other documents, and provide tenant with options. Really just, it sounds silly to say the simplistic terms, but updating the system. The way I can like check the status of my health insurance claims online, and my credit card, choose to get it electronically or with the mail. Similar common sense things for our SCREE and DREE system, which so many of our older adults rely on to, again, stay in their homes. So that's the package of legislation. I think I hit on everything.
Mhm.
And there you go. There you have it.
Thank you. Any other questions related to the legislative package? No? One thing, Eric, sorry, Myra, were you
No.
asking something? No?
No.
Okay. We're all busy with participatory budget applications. Any hints?
So it's budget season, so it's discretionary applications. I'm going to encourage
Discretionary, sorry, yeah.
every older adult center to apply for funding. I think it goes without saying, all of you do like very hyper local work, but I'm interested in the work that is done for the older adults in District 11. Adam on the call deals with a lot of the budget meetings. I'm not typically at the meetings, but if there's a particular program that you're doing that you love that needs funding or needs to be funded again, I'd love to see it. So while we are in budget season, it's also good to know that all the funding doesn't just come from the city. So for example, I'm working with Julie from Riverdale Senior Services, just trying to get some, electronics, what do they call, technology devices for older adults with some of the partners that we work with in the private sector. So even if, so there's sort of like multiple ways of getting the support. So I would, like I said, love to see the program you do, not just for funding purposes, but for any other way that I'm able to support the work that you're doing in the community.
Right. And another question that came from somebody who's not here, discretionary funding that's only for older adult centers, or would NORCS be able to apply, or would that be just sort of a totally separate process?
So we in the city council discretionary budget have some of our money is earmarked specifically for older adult centers, but that includes, I think, doesn't JASA run the NORC?
No, actually the Riverdale Y does now, but
they do.
it's switched over, and
So during the application process, for the application itself. I think the funding goes through the Y, not directly
Okay.
to the NORC,
Okay,
but it's administered through the Riverdale Y.
great. Thank you.
And wouldn't it, and it also would depend on the initiative that the organization is applying for, because there's all different types of initiatives for funding for discretionary. So I think it would
Mhm.
depend on what initiative they were looking at.
Okay,
Right. We have buckets of money that we have full discretion over. We have youth money. We have money for older adults. And then we have a pot called Support Our Seniors. And then we have, Riverdale Senior Services, digital inclusion money. We have all sorts of different pots of money that are intended to go to different initiatives.
right.
But if an older adult center is engaging in that work, digital inclusion work, they can certainly apply through that funding stream.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions for Councilmember Dinowitz? Well, thank you. You are, of course, welcome to stay with us if you like. We're going to be talking about budgets now.
Okay, well, you have fun, and I just also want to thank you, Lisa, and everyone on the board, because in general, as it relates to the budget, I know you do every year your budget recommendations, and I do take those recommendations very seriously. So I think if you look at what I funded last year, a number of the items on the Community Board 8 budget priorities list were funded. And so I'm gonna, looking forward to, I guess you're doing FY25 right now.
Right,
'cause
so
you're
we're
doing
going to
it
look
for
at the
years.
comments from 24 and now figure out what we want to put in for 25.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, it was good seeing all of you, and I have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
That was Lisa, it's Andrea. I'm just going to, if you see me leave, I have another meeting, so.
Yes, and thank you for being able to join for this
I'm
part.
so
of the
glad I
meeting.
could hear, but thank you. So if you see me go, I'm not being rude. I'm just have to go, have to leave. Okay.
And I think Miriam might be disappearing as well. But that's fine.
And I just want to say it's great to see Adam, because he and I have emailed, but I haven't met him in person. So now we have an introduction.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's nice to meet everyone as well. As the council member mentioned, I'm his legislative and budget director. My name is Adam. It's a pleasure to meet you all. And I'll be sure to follow up on the questions that we've gone over as part of this committee meeting today.
Terrific.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to make a really quick chair's report, because really the legislative, laws that just passed or that's pending was the main topic, and as well as budget that we'll get to. But now, as some of you know, I'm sort of doing a little bit of hands-on work now at a center, and I'm like amazed at all the stuff that comes through. It's mind-boggling. And so we have a new system called the PRISM system that will be converting March 1st. New consent forms, I think everyone knows about, at the older adult centers that need to be used instead of whatever else we're doing. There is a survey you might have seen from the New York Academy of Medicine. It's sort of like, they were very involved with age-friendly Manhattan and age-friendly Brooklyn. In fact, I should have mentioned this, Adam, I guess you might know that I think the council member also partially funded the survey that's going to take place for it. It's really age-friendly Bronx, but it's now rebranded to Aging Well in the Bronx. And they're rolling out, in fact, they just started rolling out a survey for older adults asking for support to roll it out to our members and as far as that we could reach in the community. So certainly on the board, we'll try to reach people to fill out this survey. It's both on paper and online. And, it's basically a needs assessment and to see what the city can do to help make this a place where we want are able to continue to live in the community. So if you have, what's that?
I just have a quick question. We weren't sent the final version of those because what I have, they're still doing those, lectures about it or whatever, the webinars
Right.
about it. And then what they sent us said that it wasn't final. So I just want to make sure. We should
Right, I
have
think they just
Yeah,
wrote
there's-
final.
There's also a Zoom meeting tomorrow regarding
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm saying. It's not
Right.
final yet.
Yeah.
We don't have the final.
At 4
version.
o'clock, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to the first one and, so anyway, if we could find a way to roll it out without, too much headache, but it's important because we want the Northwest, Bronx to be part of this. And, as well as the rest of the Bronx, hopefully. But, I think there was something happening tonight at RSS, but I will leave it to someone from RSS to announce it, and anything else that you'd like to share.
Sure, it's at 6 o'clock tonight. It's with Bobby Sackman, who used to be the public policy director at Live On New York. She is going to talk about the Fair Pay for Home Care Act and getting that passed so that our home care workers are paid a decent salary so that when we need them now and in the future, people will want to become a home care worker, which is a big issue right now. And I think as the population continues to age, is going to be a bigger problem going forward. So she's going to talk about that legislation, which is due to get passed or be voted on this month.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other updates from the community, or do we move on to budgets or budget requests? Well, let's move on. Let me see if I can pull up last year's, because it would be great if we could sort of finalize our fiscal year 25 requests by next month within our March meeting. So let me see if I can share screen, unless Myra, would you be able to bring up the budget doc that I sent over?
Yeah, let me see if I can find.
Oh, here, I got it. I have it. Spence budget. Share. There we go. It worked. So this is what I did is I copied and pasted from this huge spreadsheet. So there'll be some typos and some, grammar things. But this is what we put through during this last budget process. And this is just, I copied what we had presented for our budget requests and Department for the Aging, New York City, or Aging, or NYC Aging. And their replies here are in bold, and then I just replied, for us very quickly. I think I had to do it in a few days, to reply to their replies. So of course, the top on our list is to support our adult centers. Many needs here, and it's probably especially now with, I need to pay our staff a little bit, more competitively, and food and technology and all the things that we're doing. Basically, they just asked which centers, so I said all of our centers and all in New York City. I'm just going to scroll through so you see, and we could decide what we want to keep in. The second most important that we had was our food programs, our nutrition programs, because we're seeing more and more need in the community. They just asked that they need to look at the numbers, but I know that the older adult centers always provide these numbers to the Department for the Aging. The next one was affordable housing. And I'm glad to see that there's a lot of legislation in this, going in the direction of housing. Their reply was they're going to, they agree with the request, but, if there's funding, let's see. The next is transportation. We're looking for dedicated transportation, but they did note that there's an RFP coming up for transportation. Margie, if you're talking to us, you're muted. No. I'm not talking to us, never mind, sorry. So that there's an RFP coming up for transportation. They'll try to accommodate our request. Now, for years we had dementia care, sort of the social adult day program that now is really only in Riverdale Senior Services, RSS. But basically it's pointing the way to the state that runs the program. And so this probably needs to come off of our requests. And perhaps RSS could confirm that this is solely funded by the state and not by the city. Safe crossings. I don't know if everyone agrees, but I think there's been a big improvement in our streets, and unfortunately a little too much striping, but at least it's being renewed. But we have to be very specific if we're going to put any kind of request in for the Department of Transportation to approve our crossings, in terms of location and what we're asking for. Accessoride funding, similar to the other transportation requests, they're saying that this will be part of an RFP that's coming up this year. There's agreement with the requests. And the last one was older adult internet access. Well, we see something is going through in that, and they're saying that this is a citywide effort. So, but it's not a budget request. So I don't know where to go with that. And the last was a very specific location to have countdown clocks, which is something to be further reviewed. So with that, I don't know if you want me to keep this on or not. For 2025 fiscal year, I'm leaning towards keeping the funding request for the centers to be the top of our list because we do so much. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing so we could all see each other. Does everyone here agree that the funding for our centers is sort of number one, so we could provide the services, including outreach to the broader community, just to keep it number one for fiscal year 25? Their consensus?
I definitely would. And because again, the older adult centers by that time will be 3 years into a multi-year contract. This is the baseline contract.
Right.
So the time for any, amendments or additional funding would be in that second 3 years. So I would definitely keep it, at top. And I don't know if related, there are some wonderful services that we and other providers do that aren't baselined. So I always make a pitch for that. Our social model adult daycare center is not baselined, and neither is our geriatric mental health program. And we, of course, will apply for discretionary funds, but I think from a provider standpoint, each year having to apply for a program that's existed for so many years. I mean, if there's anything we can do from this level to advocate that these funds become baselined, meaning they're in a multi-year contract. Yeah.
Right.
A competitive bid, of course.
Great. I'm wondering if that's a budget request or a campaign that we need to.
Probably more of a campaign. That's what's on my mind, but yeah.
No, it's important. And the social adult day program, is that state funding or is it part of the city?
Our program is city funded. It's thanks to Councilmember Dinowitz, it's discretionary funding, but year after year. So yeah, I am kind of blending conversations. Each year we have to apply for it. Whereas from a provider standpoint, if you knew you had a 3-year contract that you won competitively, it would help, grow the program.
Right. Okay, I'll try to build the language in there and see where it goes. Thanks. Food and housing, I mean, as of today, also the top needs, would you say? Anyone? Okay. I'm wondering with the new legislative package that just was approved. I'm wondering if there's something in there that we need to get funding to actually make these programs happen, or is that all discretionary also? Yeah. Myra, any thoughts? I'm not Lee, members
No,
of.
I mean, the stuff that Eric spoke about, it sounded to me that there are funding pathways. And I'm not sure if we would be in a position to put these on our budget. It seems that the agencies that would be involved in these would be the ones either asking for funding. I mean, it's a thought. But, just to be able to expedite implementation of these.
Like I'm thinking just specifically like multilingual. I mean, we all do it, we have Spanish programs, but if we need to increase, like we don't have up in the northwest corner, we have so many Russian speaking. They also speak English though, but do we need to add additional programs to make it more comfortable for people to participate?
Right. So, I mean, looking at it one way, I think that when the survey is done and it will be determined if there need to be multilingual programs. I mean, for that, I don't know where the money would come from the city, probably to fund those programs. Would it be worth it though to ask for money, aside from this legislation, ask for money for multilingual outreach?
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll add that, I guess, in the description of a request for funding, increased funding for our center. And food, I mean, we have pantries and we support other pantries and local fridges. And I don't know if that's our outreach food programs outside of the congregate meals, if those are funded. I don't think that's part of the DFTA budget, right?
I don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that's separate, whether our own fundraising separate or discretionary funds. Okay. But clearly food costs have gone up tremendously.
Please, I just bought a dozen eggs. I had to take out a second mortgage.
Right. Right, so does.
Not alone that, the packages are getting smaller and the price went up on
This
each.
is true.
Yeah. Any other thoughts of anything new that we should add to our requests from either DFTA or related, HP, the housing preservation, or, it's great to see these legislations going through. I just really want to make sure there's money to make it happen. I'm sort of a nut when it comes to operations along with the laws. I don't know. I guess that's it.
Excuse me, Lisa, I need to bail out. Want to see if I can mention something that was much earlier. You said there is a group or class to instruct Spanish so we can understand Spanish a little better. Why not the reverse, to have Spanish people to introduce to English, as it was done to all kinds of refugees in God knows hundreds of years that we have here in New York.
No, Herb, thank you. That's an excellent thing. Our centers might be having sort of English as a second language classes. Our libraries definitely have those classes, but I think that's a great idea also for our centers. I know the Y just added a current events class in Spanish, but I think it also has for people who are learning Spanish, but who are at a certain level, but it's meant for Spanish speakers. But Herb, that's good. And welcoming new refugees. Yeah.
Well, very good. Very nice. I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Herb. Nice to see you. What else do we have? Oh, our minutes, board members, do we have a quorum? Yes, we do. Could we have a quick vote maybe on our minutes from January? Please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Great, great. Anyone object? Any board members objecting? Rita, Margaret, we're
No.
good. Terrific, thank you.
Okay.
If anyone else, before we say goodbye for the day, any other? There's a raised hand there from Cesar. Is that a hand raise?
I don't think so.
Oh, there we go. Cesar, do you have a question?
No, I don't know the hand raise, but I am just gonna, if given a moment, I just want to plug that because we were talking about food, that Kingsbridge Heights Community Center does have a pantry that is open and available to all. So if there are people that need, I can send information about it.
Great, thank you. I think we've been posting on the community board sort of these resources, and thank you. So you partner, I know, with RSS on that, and great, thank you. Is the Church of the Mediator still a site, or is that one not available now?
I don't believe it's available because I believe they're closing. The building is being sold.
Yeah, Church of Mediator is no longer doing.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm glad that Kingsbridge Heights is still there for the community. Thank you.
And RSS does publish all, on our website and in our wellness newsletter, the schedule of the different pantries in the community.
Great. Thank you. Great. Well, with that, thank you for joining again. I hope everyone will make it to our March meeting. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was really very,
Everyone,
very
thank you, Madam
informative.
Chair. Much
Bye-bye.
appreciated. Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Bye.